Hey there everybody, it's Greg with the West Seneca Valley Railroad, and I'm just doing a quick video. I had a question that was asked to me, oh god, probably about 3 days ago by one of my viewers, and I just wanted to kind of take a moment to go over and try to explain as best I could. I believe I understand what was being asked, so if I'm wrong with this, let me know if there's something else that you need to know, and I'll gladly answer as best I can. First, I need to state this for the record. I'm not like some expert on all things model railroading. I'm not. But my usual thing is to state, as I do with just about everything I do these days, if I can give you an answer for something, I will give you the best answer I can, and I hope that'll help, or at least if need be, I'll try to direct you to someone who might know. That being said, the question actually had to do with Kato Unitrack, and I have been using Kato Unitrack for, probably, I want to say it's been at least 5 years now that I started working with this product. And of course, those of you who have already followed a little bit of what I'm doing know I have not actually as of yet completed my layout. I really actually only got back to start building it this past year, but I have had experience in the past working with model trains. I used to use Atlas SnapTrack and FlexTrack for working on a layout. I originally had one back in 2007, 2008 that I'd been working on. I didn't get very far with it before I moved, and I was going to start over, and things changed, and I did not get back to it. So that being said, I had everything kind of in storage, and when I was getting ready to go back and start working on it, I was looking for the more of the FlexTrack, and I found out that I guess there was some sort of a shortage going on. Atlas had issues. They weren't able to produce more for whatever reason. It was some sort of manufacturing issue, I think, in China. But as a result of it, you really couldn't easily get FlexTrack. You could barely get any SnapTrack, and so you kind of left in a lurch of, I don't know how I'm going to work on my layout if I can't get any track to build it. I stopped down to a hobby shop in the southern tier of western New York, Rock Springs Station, which I believe is still there. And the guy who owns it actually very heavily into the hobby. He actually only does N and Z scale, and he gave me some excellent pointers on going into and building a layout using Kato Unitrack. I am really glad that he turned me onto it. It ended up being one of the best investments I could have made, and it's been fantastic ever since. Getting back to what I was saying before, so I got turned on to Unitrack, and I got turned on to it in a big way, and I have been really, really satisfied with it ever since. And some people I know sit there and say, oh, well, Unitrack and SnapTracks are for kids. Okay, I'm a big kid, whatever. For me, it was more a matter of I want to be able to actually sit there and run my trains rather than having to spend a lot of time working on laying track out. And this hobby is like any hobby. You get out of it what you put into it, and you have to do the parts that make you happy with it. I'm happy doing less in the way of laying track and more in the way of running my trains than anything else. So that's me, that's my preference, that's how I'm going to do it. Anyway, so to answer the question that was put up there, Tom, I believe is his name. Yes, Tom wrote and asked me about how I did passing sidings and did wiring for it. And as I said before, I always like to just give the warning and heads up that I'm not an expert, but I will do my best to always answer questions as thoroughly as I can. And the first thing I need to note is I am not running DC, I am running DCC with my layout, or at least that's the direction I'm going with at this stage. I started wiring up for it a couple weeks ago, and so far I'm happy with having made that decision, so that's probably the way things are going to continue going for me. That aside, he had a question regarding how he could do his wiring effectively, or how he might be able to handle his wiring, and if it's something that I would consider too. So I'm going to use my design just as a template for it. He made a reference to my yard, and I think what he was actually referring to is one of the station sections. So Tom, if you're watching this, I hope this will give some clarity, and I hope I have the right area. If I'm wrong, let me know, and I will do my best to give you additional answers or details, and try to find out some way of kind of giving you my feedback. All right? So here we go. I have here a layout of the West Seneca Valley Railroad, and I believe Tom's question specifically referred to this area I have located over here. This is what I'm calling Barber Lane Station. He referred to it as my yard. The yard is actually the section over here that's highlighted in red. This is one of two passenger stations on the route. I'll just change this so that it's a little bit easier to discern. So these sections are actually independent of each other. So Tom was asking if he was going to be setting up similar to this, or if I was going to be setting up my layout and using a DC system, how would I handle my installation or powering of the various track sections? And what I would do probably is not actually depend on the power routing system. Kato Unitrack uses power routing turnouts rather than what most systems use, which is to not have any installation on the turnouts. At least to the best of my knowledge, like Atlas and FlexTrack don't. The Pico track system doesn't. Unitrack, I believe, is the only one that does. Maybe the Bachmann EasyTrack does too, but I've never actually really played around with it enough to know. But Unitrack actually allows you to say, okay, if both of this turnout and this turnout are set to their main line or their straight lines, power would then be supplied to this blue track only. If you have them set to the divergent lines, the turnouts, this section that's yellow would be powered, and actually the track over here, the turning section of the track, the diverging section of this switch would also be yellow. It's just I can't really show that independently. If you set this particular turnout to its straight line, power would continue from the main line all the way conceivably over to here, and then again, either for a straight section, it'd go into this like light blue area. If it was set to the diverging, it would go to this orange area. And the only real problem is if you have both of these turnouts in there, they need to be set simultaneously to the same direction. Otherwise, you're going to have a minor headache, because technically then both the yellow section and the blue section will be powered. If you have this one set to the straight section, it'll be sending power to the blue, and this set it to the divergent, it'll be sending power to the yellow. So both of these will be powered at the same time. You may not want that. And of course, if you set this one down here to using this track, you could end up with one of these stub sidings over here having power, and if this one's still set to its diverging route, this one's going to have power. It can get to be a little bit of a headache to keep track of. I really wasn't all that fond of taking that approach for a permanent layout. Now, if you're running just like a little Christmas layout, probably fine that way. Probably not a big deal. You're not going to be doing complex operations in most cases on a Christmas layout. It's just to have something running around the tree. So if you're doing that, there's no point to actually sitting there and really worrying about putting in any more sophisticated wiring. You're only going to be needing to worry about 4 turnouts, not a big deal. If this is supposed to be the start of a larger layout project, and it's going to be a permanent layout project, then what I would actually suggest doing is putting a set of insulated joiners on the rails for here and here, another set down here, right there, one there, one there, one there, and then having a power feeder over here, having a power feeder over here, and then having a power feeder probably across these sections. And this way, the only place where there's any actual power cutoffs are these little sections over here. In fact, if you really wanted to, you could even add one more, connector, and let's say right over here. And this way, more or less at any point, regardless of how the turnouts are set, you're controlling your power, predominantly concerned with controlling your power from cutoff switches. You can use like Atlas block selectors, you can use any sort of single pull, single throw switch. If it's just a single power pack, you can wire up single pull, double throw, I think it is, or double pull, single throw. I can never remember which is which. You could wire up a lot of different ways essentially. As I said, at that point, it'd be really easy to take a Atlas selector block and put it in here and use that to control the 4 separate segments. And of course, your main line you can just always leave powered because you're not going to really want to shut off power on your main line necessarily, at least at that stage. As you add more track in, that might be a different story, but this is just focusing on the simple question. So this is how you could do it if you were doing just a DC layout. 4 insulated blocks in this case, and power for your main line, probably on both ends because it's a little bit better to have some extra power feeders, as I've always been told, and I kind of believe that. And then perhaps one in here just to make sure that these turnouts on this end are always set. And the power routing at that point plays a very minimal to completely eliminated role in running and managing your layout. There are pluses and minuses to doing it this way. I can't say which is going to be better. I can just say this is how I would handle it. As for being a DCC guy, which is what I am, having insulation provided by those rail blocks, the insulated rail joiners, less necessary because at that point you're not so much controlling segments of tracks, you're controlling individual or pairs of locomotives. So the need to insulate for strictly control purposes is more or less gone. The one reason that you might consider, or actually 2 reasons you might consider doing insulated rail joiners if you're going to do DCC. The first one is if you want to isolate individual blocks while you're doing debugging and testing of your circuits. That's one way you can do it. And the second common reason is if you're going to do a signaling system, which is something that I plan on doing down the line. You might want to use insulators so you can block off the sections, and then you can do current sensing. You can determine where a train is on your layout. That's one approach to doing it. Some people also like to use optical sensors to do it. DIY and digital railroad, or maybe it's digital and DIY railroad. I can never remember for sure. He has an interesting video on how he approaches it, which is to use a series of infrared sensors, and it's a great idea. I'm planning on going the route of using current sensing for mine, but again, this is a personal preference thing. This is not me saying that his way isn't good or my way is better. It's a matter of personal preference. So anyway, getting back to this, as far as the insulated rail joiners are concerned, I hope this kind of points you in the right direction, Tom. Hopefully this is the question that you're asking about. If it wasn't this, let me know. Okay, that is it, folks. Tom, I hope that answered your question. I hope it gives you some idea of where you can head with this. I hope I was answering what you were looking for. And if not, please don't hesitate to let me know. You have a different question or other questions, or if I got the question wrong, whatever. If I don't have an answer for you, I will gladly do my best to point you to someone who can help. As for the rest of it, I'm hoping that in the next week or 2 that I should be able to get some more done with the West Seneca Valley layout. I don't know if you can see it behind me a little bit there. I haven't actually had a chance to do much of anything else for the last week or 2 because work has been kind of a bear, and as we're heading into the end of the season, there were a lot of things that needed to get wrapped up before I could even remotely worry about hobby stuff. But the kids are off from school now. I've got just a couple of days left before I'm on vacation for a nice 9-day stretch, so my goal is going to be to at least finish all of the rudimentary track wiring stuff that we need to do, and possibly work on the prototyping a little further for the turnout control panels that I'm going to do. I'm going to try to get that all in during my break, and if I'm really, really lucky and manage to have the time, I'm also going to do some of the plastering work and some additional stuff to get the scenics laid out and the track level and all of that. So stay tuned for more stuff. I will try to put out another video probably in a couple of days. Again, if you have any questions, go ahead and leave them in the comments down below. Don't forget to check out my website, gregorski.com. I detail what I'm doing over there a little bit more than I do in the videos. And I know it's probably annoying because I'm long-winded enough here. But anyway, you can feel free to, look at what I have going on over there, ask questions, comment on things. If you have some better suggestions for Tom on this, or if you have suggestions or ideas for anything, feel free to reach out and let me know. And I'll do my best to get you answers for it. So if I do not get a chance to post another video on this, Merry Christmas to you, Happy Holidays, whatever you celebrate, if you celebrate anything, and otherwise I will see you again soon.